Today's video I'm going to show you 10 essential tips for becoming a better plasterer. It's not only going to improve your game, but you're going to get flatter walls, better textures and overall better finish if you just follow these 10 tips designed for beginners and advanced plasterers alike. Let's get into it. Okay, so the first major thing is to make sure that the preparation and everything before it is completely right. So first thing, corner beads. You've got to make sure that when you're cutting them, you cut them directly, you cut them accurately, but more importantly, all the angles meet. So this is so important. If you're not going to get any beads, or I'm not going to worry about the scrim tape yet, but if the beads aren't perfectly matched, then nothing afterwards is going to make sense. A good tip as well is these are little butterfly stitches. So you create a diagonal on the edges and the corners of angle beads or anything around windows, any reveals, and that'll just hopefully correct any cracking that might come from the corners. But as you can see, the beads meet perfectly there. Scrim tape the joints. I'm not going to teach you to suck eggs there, but yeah, that's the one. Now the first big real skill in plastering for me is to make sure that when you're applying your plaster, you flatten it as you go. So I'm going to show you on this little small section of wall here. We come up with the plaster, come back on ourselves and trowel out any lines before us. So this way what happens is when you're applying the plaster, you come back on yourself, take back the lines you left behind, and that means you're going to have a relatively flat wall before you even come to the flattening stages. Now let me show you in a proper example in a minute, but as you can see, you come up and you come back on yourselves, troweling out any lines that you left before. Let me show you a proper example now. I'll show you a real example on how it's done. Take the plaster, again a decent amount. We're going to start from the bottom. I'm holding the trowel at 90-degree angle, holding that plaster. See, 90-degree, fingers out ready. I'm going to come down, come all the way to the bottom, come all the way up. Now the top, this is something that is a struggle. We've got a suction, it's stuck there on the plaster. The worst thing you want is to come to the top and then forget to swivel. But basically, if you just tilt the plaster, just tilt it ever so slightly, tilt it 10 degrees. That allows you to come back and flatten anything you've left behind. So we come up, come back at ourselves, take the lines out, and then come back up. So, come back up, come back up. The second tip now is when you're working on angle beads is make sure that you only take what you need. So easy for plasterers to get a full hawk full or full trowel full of plaster. The idea is you just take a little section as you need it. So obviously I've just loaded the top half of my trowel for the top half of the bead. And let me show you a little trick here. When it comes to applying or taking the plaster off, did you see that? Just cut a little bit of plaster off at a time. I'll show you in slow motion. Instead of getting a full trowel full of plaster, just try and cut a little bit off at the time, and it means when you're applying your beads, it's just going to be so much easier, it's going to be less mess, and it's going to be a bit more easier to maintain. If you had a trowel full of plaster and you troweled to cut a bead, then it'll go everywhere and it'll create a bit of a problem. So this just maintains and keeps a good balance. Now the speed skim, if you've seen any of my videos, you know I love this, but I'm not going to go into this. This isn't a plastering skill, but I do believe a spatula does help to get your plaster flatter in the long run. But again, this video I'm not going to go on about the speed skim too much. I want to show you some specific skills that's going to make you a better plasterer. So in terms of the speed skim, it is what it is. It just helps, but you don't necessarily need it. So always apply 2 coats of plaster, that's a given. But when it comes to cleaning off your beads, what I like to do is keep my angles clean as I go. So I've got the bucket trowel with me, that's collecting any excess plaster that I use, and I try and scrape and keep the beads clean as I'm going. And another good rule of thumb is always trowel the way your beads are designed. So if your trowel's running vertically, trowel upwards. If your trowel's running horizontally, you trowel across it horizontally. I'll go into that again in a minute. Like I was saying before, you want to follow the direction of the bead. If you've got a bead running horizontally, you want to trowel horizontally across it. Got a bead going vertically, you trowel vertically. And this means you're not going to get any humps. If you go the other way, you might get a hump or a dip in the bead. If you follow the bead, then your trowel is going to be parallel to the bead and running in line, which means you won't get any humps or dips available. Now the next point we're going to be working on is similar and touching on the point what we looked at. Now this next point is quite advanced. It's definitely not for beginners, but if you can pick this up, then guarantee it's going to save you time and make the process a lot smoother. So the idea is similar to what we were talking about before. When you're troweling, is called a constant trowel. You don't let go. So at the top of the motion, you tilt the angle of the trowel 10 degrees, like we spoke about before, and this allows you, that when you are troweling, to not let go of the trowel. So we've got a constant motion going on. Now, it's great because you can go any direction. I'm going to talk about dual directions in a second because it's crucial, but it just means you're going to save a lot of time and you can trowel constantly. So you come up, back on ourselves, you can come up, and this just means you've got a fluid motion, and it means that you don't collect as much plaster on your trowel. This is very important, by the way. So when you are troweling vertically and horizontally, and it just means your wall is going to get flatter overall, which leads to better results in the long run. Now back to the point of cleaning. This little clip here shows me always cleaning my trowel. If you don't, you can get a tendency to get tiger stripes, so always keep your trowels clean and remove any excess plaster. The next tip is about direction. So we've got the wall here, it's coming towards the later stages of plastering now. Again, always keep your beads clean, keep them going. So again, this time we're running up the bead, again parallel to the bead, and then what I want to talk about is cross troweling. So we've been troweling vertically throughout the whole process pretty much, but what you want to be doing is towards the later stages cross troweling your plaster. This just ensures that you're going to get an overall flatter wall. If you only go one direction, you'll get it flat vertically, but horizontally might not be the same. So you need to make sure that you are cross troweling and you are going both ways, because it just means you're going to get an overall flatter wall. And again, you can come up again after it, but just make sure you are cross troweling in between. It ensures your wall will be flatter in the long run. And again, same on your wall above, any wall basically. I was troweling vertically before. Now I'm cross troweling. Whichever way you was troweling, within like the third stage, maybe the second flat, and you want to be opposite to what you have been doing throughout. Tip number whatever. Always wear knee pads. That's a pretty good tip. And again, keeping your beads clean. And we're coming towards the later stages of plastering now. We're coming towards pretty much to the end, I think. And look at the finish you're getting. Now, this is in theory the wet trowel. It's winter. So I don't like to put too much water on the plaster just because it's taking so long to dry anyway. So what I'm doing is cross troweling again. This is the penultimate stage of plastering. And again, the wet trowel is just going to ensure we've got an overall flatter wall there. We've got an edge of the plaster, edge of the wall. And what I do is use the top right end of my trowel, just the top right corner, and put all that pressure on that edge. And that means you're just going to get a nice crisp line along your edges, whether it's a ceiling, a wall line. It just ensures that you get a nice crisp finish there. Now this part is more about tools, but again I think it's really essential to make sure you get that flat matte finish. You don't want a shiny finish in plastering. It doesn't help the painters, don't really help anyone. So the big secret to this is plastic. This is a Rafina Plasiflex. It's a plastic trowel. One, it leaves in an amazing finish, and two, it really mattens down the complexion and the shininess of the plaster. Gives it a flat matte finish rather than a shiny finish what you'd get with steel. Because it's plastic, it doesn't pull the moisture to the surface, which means it won't shine it up as much as a steel trowel will. And again, same theory as before, I always do horizontal cross troweling when I'm using the plastic. It just ensures you're going to get that final flatten, and it just means you're going to get flatter walls in general. So as you can see, working around the beads, cross troweling, and we end up looking and having a nice finished wall. It's crisp, clean, flat and matte, which is exactly what we're looking for in plastering. And that's it. The big plastering skills you need to become a better plasterer. But if you want to learn the full process to plastering, we do a free course. It's online based, and you get emails with videos every day. It's completely free, and we'll learn and teach you the full process to plastering, from mixing to application, the 7 steps to plastering a wall. Every day is golden information, just like this video. So if you're up for learning full process plastering, hit the link below, it's just in the description. Or if you want to see a video where I outline the full process first, then click this video here, subscribe here. Thanks so much for watching, I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.